the first thing that I want to talk about, or that we need to review before we start, is how to multiply our binomials and also how to find what x equals. So in the first part, we're actually multiplying these. And so the way that you multiply two binomials, there's a word that we use that helps us know in what order we do it. Do you guys remember what that is? FOIL. Okay? So that stands for first, outer, inner, and last. So in number 1, if we did first times first, we're doing the first thing in both parentheses. So 2 times 3x gives me 6x squared. Then if we were going to do outer times outer, we're doing the two farthest out or farthest away from each other. So 2x times 7, which would give me 14x. Then I stands for inner, so we're doing the ones inmost. So negative 4 times 3x, which gives me negative 12x. And then L stands for last, so we're doing negative 4 times positive 7. So we always want to look at the sign that's in front of the number, and that's what stays with it. Even though this is a minus, we treat it as a negative 4 times a positive 7, and that gives us a negative 28. So our last thing that we do there is we combine our like terms. So what looks alike there? 14x and negative 12x. So that gives me 6x squared plus 2x minus 28. Okay, let's try one more that looks like that. So in number 2, another way that you can look at this is you just kind of distribute what's in the first parentheses to the second parentheses. So I'll do that method too. We can say we have to multiply m times everything in the second parentheses. So if we do that, we'd get m times m, which gives me m squared. We'd also do m times negative 1, which gives me a negative m. Now that I've distributed this m to both things, I want to distribute my negative 2 to both terms. So I'm going to do negative 2 times m, which gives me negative 2m, and then I'm going to do negative 2 times a negative 1, which gives me a positive 2. Okay, so I've distributed the m, I distributed the negative 2, so we're done other than if we have like terms. So do we have like terms here? Okay, what are my like terms? Negative m and negative 2m, so I'm going to bring m squared down. Negative m and negative 2m would give me a negative 3m plus 2. Okay? So either method, whichever one works better for you, that's the one you use. Now, looking at number 4, we're going to solve for x. In number 4, we set this one equal to 0. So we're going to do x plus 5 equals 0, and then we solve for x. So to get x by itself, we'd have to do what? Subtract 5. Very good. And so that ends up getting us, or giving us, x equals negative 5. Okay, so we started out with x plus 5 equals 0, and what do you end up getting after you solve? It's always the what? The opposite. So what do you think x would equal in this parentheses? A positive 3. So it started with minus, or a negative, and it ends up being the opposite. So that's a trick that we can use, is that it's always going to be the opposite of the last number. So, Haiti, in number 5, in this first parentheses, what would x equal? A positive 4. Very good. Bryant, in this second parentheses, what would x equal? A negative 7. Very good. Okay, So I think y'all are pretty good at that. So let's try writing a quadratic function when it gives me the zeros. So in number 1, they give me x equals -3 and x equals -2. So the first thing we want to do is write down the factors. So let's go back really quick. These were factors, x plus 5, x minus 3. This is where we solved. These were factors, this is where we solved. So if we're going from where we solved back to the factors, what should happen to these signs here? They're going to change. So this one would be x plus 3. And this one would be x plus 2. So those are my factors. Now, to write the equation, what we're going to have to do is we're going to multiply those. So we're going to do our FOIL again, our distributing, whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to do first times first. X times x gives me x squared. Outer times outer, x times 2 gives me 2x. Then I'm going to do inner times inner, 3 times x gives me 3x. And last, I'm doing 3 times 2, which gives me 6. So my equation is going to be what we get when we, our final answer, when we combine our like terms. So it would be y equals, does x squared change? Nope, so we bring that down. Then we have like terms, 2x plus 3x gives us 5x plus 6. So that's our equation. That's all we're doing. So let's try another one of those, make sure we get that. So in number 2, Amy, can you tell me what the factor for this one would be? X plus 5. Okay. Hope, what about the factor for x equals 3? X minus 3. Very good. Now, if I want to write my equation, I'm going to have to multiply. Jalen, which method do you like better, FOIL or distributing? Okay, so let's use distributing then. So we're going to do x times both things in the parentheses. So I'm doing x times x gives me x squared. Then I'm going to do x times -3, which is a -3x. So I distribute my x. Now I've got to distribute this +5. So I'm going to do 5 times x, which gives me 5x. And then 5 times -3 gives me -15. So now we can write our equation. Remember, we're always going to want to have y equals something. So we're going to have y equals. We can go ahead and bring down our x squared. Our like terms are -3x and a +5x. So what does that give us? A +2x. And then minus 15. All right, let's try one more of those. So number 3, Courtney, looking at number 3, what would my factor be for x equals 4? X minus 4. And Tyler, what would it be for x equals 1? X minus 1. Okay. Brianna, if I'm going to multiply these, what's your favorite method, FOIL or distributing? Okay. So we'll distribute here. So we're going to do x times both things in the parentheses. So x times x gives me x squared. Then I have to do x times -1, which is just a -x. Now that I distributed x to both things, I have to also distribute -4 to both things. So I'm going to do -4 times x, which gives me negative 4x. And then I'm going to do negative 4 times negative 1. What's a negative times a negative? A positive. So that gives me positive 4. Now, what needs to be at the very beginning of my equation? Y equals, we can bring down our x squared. I have like terms is negative x and negative 4x, which gives me a negative 5x plus 4. Okay, now what I want to look at is how to write a function in standard form looking at the graph. So if you will flip to the back of that note sheet, they give us a graph, and now we're going to get it from the roots. Okay? So roots, does anybody remember what a root stands for, what that means? Okay, it's the x-intercept. Okay? So wherever it touches the x-axis, is the x-axis my up and down or my side to side? Side to side. So wherever this U shape, this parabola, hits the x-axis, so it hits it here and it hits it here. So what is the number where it hits here? So my root is x equals negative 1. What about right here? A positive 3. Okay? So, Khalil, what would my factor of x equals negative 1 be? X what? Plus 1. Okay, and Bryant, what about x equals 3? X minus 3. So to write my equation, I'm going to have to multiply. So we're going to do FOIL this time since we did distributing the last couple times. So we're going to do our first times our first. X times x gives me x squared. Then we're going to do outer times outer. So x times negative 3 gives me negative 3x. Then inner, 1 times x gives me 1x, or you can just put x. And then last times last is 1 times negative 3, which is negative 3. Now remember, the first thing we want in our equation is y equals. Then our x squared is not going to change, so we bring x squared down. We combine our like terms, so our like terms are negative 3x and positive x. So a negative 3 and a positive 1, what does that give me? A negative 3 and a positive 1, what does that give me? A negative 2x. And then we bring down our minus 3. Okay. Let's look at another one of those. So let's look at 6. So in 6, we're looking where this parabola intersects this x-axis. So Mackenzie, can you tell me what x equals here? X equals 1. And Allison, what does x equal here? X equals 5. Okay? So Haley, what would my factors be then? And x minus 5. Very good. So then to get our equation, we would just multiply those. So we're going to do first times first, which gives me x squared, outer times outer, negative 5x, inner times inner, negative 1x, and last times last, negative times negative is a positive 5. So to write my equation, I always want y equals. So we have y equals. X squared doesn't change, so it's x squared. Then I have a negative 5x and a negative 1x, which gives me a negative 6x. Bring down my plus 5. Okay, I have one more special case to show you, and then we will be done with our notes for today. So let's look at number 8. Josh, in number 8, what would my x or my root equal here? Negative 2. Okay? And then my x here would be what, Tyler? 2. Okay? So, Brianna, what would my factors be? X plus 2, x minus 2. Very good. Okay, and then the last thing we want to do is multiply. So if we multiply, we're doing first times first. Gives me x squared. Outer times outer gives me negative 2x. Then I do inner times inner, gives me a positive 2x. And last times last gives me negative 4. Okay, so for my equation, I always need y equals. X squared is not going to change, so we put x squared. Now, if I have a negative 2x and a positive 2x, what does that give me? 0. Okay? So a negative and a positive with the same number is going to cancel out. So those go completely away, and all I'm left is minus 4. Okay? So I wanted to make sure y'all see that so you know that those immediately cancel out.